They came to Earth yesterday. The aliens, I mean. You just don't remember. I don't blame you for forgetting, even if it was only yesterday. If anything, I've come to accept it's how things are now. I would complain more, but to be honest, this is probably something closer to penance for what I've done. I'll do my best to tell you what happened before I'm kicked off this library computer. Who knows, maybe it'll jog your memory about the aliens you've forgotten about. There exists an organization unknown to the public with the secret and singular purpose of contacting extraterrestrial life. Dubbed the Epsilon Project, the program is really just a relic of the 40s alien craze, its assembly made possible through a conspiracy of the most paranoid of politicians in that era. The powerful and expensive equipment that fill Epsilon's halls are due to a budget that derives its funding under the miscellaneous section of the U.S. Defense Bill. You didn't think those Tomahawk missiles really cost $1 million a pop, did you? The decades have gone by, and noon's the wiser. To really understand why things turned out the way they did, you might want to understand what Epsilon was. At Epsilon, we didn't just look through telescopes searching for refractions of light caused by hydrocarbons suggesting the mere possibility of life on a planet. That's an admirable strategy, one based in a science we understand well too, but honestly it's akin to using a magnifying glass to find a specific grain of sand at the beach. What's familiar to us humans is also barely visible on the vast canvas that is the knowledge of the universe. Instead, our methods were referred to as purposefully exotic. Behind closed doors, our lead scientists conducted experiments that nobody fully understood other than them. You see, us secondary staff got pieces of the puzzle, a single test tube to fill, a data set to crunch, but never the full picture. It didn't take a genius to see that what we were doing was of dubious legality, and the gossip around the office often revealed disturbing information. One guy mentioned having to vet a group of people for an experiment. People? For an experiment? No one in the break room had any idea what you'd have needed human test subjects for at Epsilon, but I guarantee you whatever test was conducted wasn't FDA, ACA, FBI, or any combination of letters approved. Besides the occasional rumors though, no one said or did anything. The one very golden rule at Epsilon was silence. For a simpler diagnosis, I'd refer to Ken's name for us, Crackhead NASA. Obsessive about a single purpose, often unproductive, and unhinged from reality. We're also expensive, Ken would add, like a crack addiction. Anyway, my name is Isaac and I used to work with them. Pleased to meet you, sorry for what we've done. Those of you who have had an event in your life filled with regret will know what I'm speaking of when I talk about the numb hell. It occurs often when you are alone and often when you are tired. Where perhaps another person would find solace in the quiet, you find a screaming silence. For me, it's during those times I am transported to the day I helped kickstart the invasion of Earth. It was 7 p.m. in Epsilon HQ and I was staying late, again, watching Ken finish analysis of what he called the most promising coordinates yet. To be clear, each new set of coordinates was the most promising yet to Ken. Contact with alien life. Ken boomed. We sat alone in his cubicle, and other than his own echoing voice, the light tapping at his keyboard was the only sound in the office. We were the last two in the office, as usual. Ken, just saying it out loud doesn't mean it'll happen, I said tiredly. Trying is one thing, but getting this excited every time? I'm practicing for when we're at the podium announcing our discovery, he replied, swiveling to face me with an impish grin and a wagging finger. And anyway, don't say that too loud or we'll be out of a job. Every day I get a random assortment of planets to create biological profiles on. After some analysis, I sent the latest, most promising results to Ken, who then uses his own classified method to attempt to contact extraterrestrial life. Oh man, getting fired. That would be a dream come true. I turned and yelled into the empty office. Let me out a hurry. Ken chuckled, giving a final press on his keyboard before springing out of his seat. Regardless, we'll see when the results come back. Who knows, it could pay us a visit tomorrow. I smiled, grabbing my coat off my chair. I'll never get how you have so much energy doing this job. Must be whatever goes on back there. I motioned at the sealed doors that led to a corridor containing each lead scientist's laboratories and secret experiments. Referencing the lab was a pointless joke I did with Ken. I would always point it out, and he would always politely, but per protocol totally ignore how I acknowledged its existence. Doing a whole lot of work for no significant results is how I got my PhD. And anyway, you're one to talk since you're still here too, Isaac. Maybe you're more motivated than you let on? I shrugged. Didn't you promise a Christmas bonus for every alien found? I'm here for the money. The conversation ended with the abrupt, red glow from Ken's terminal. I tried to read the text on the screen, but Ken had immediately dashed back to his terminal, blocking the screen when he did so, his back to me. What's up? We getting the bonus? I spoke. Ken didn't react to my words. Still hovering over the terminal, he quickly switched to his phone, rapidly swiping down to refresh a browse page. Isaac, I need you to check the news, Ken muttered. What? Check the news in the break room, go. Ken raising his voice was all the signal I needed. I ran over to the break room, snatched up a remote and tapped the power button as I pointed it towards the TV. The channel was already set to the news, but the quality was terrible on the break room TV. Massive fire in downtown Manhattan, blared the fuzzy broadcast. The impact of the meteorite and the resulting fire have already caused untold damage. Officials announced dash. Oh, Ken had followed me into the room just then. They're saying it's a meteor. I had never heard his voice so flat before that moment. Ken was chipper in even the most stressful of situations. Ken, what is going on? He shook his head. No, if it was a meteor, then we would have anticipated it. We should have caught on to its trajectory before it landed. I came up with various explanations. Perhaps we had missed it, or our tools weren't sophisticated enough to catch all the possible meteor trajectories with Earth. Ken's response was muted, filled with silent nods. He never stopped looking between his terminal, his phone, and occasionally the break room TV. Ken and I didn't sleep that night, and the rest of the staff ended up being 24/7 on call, sleeping at their desks between monitoring and analyzing the destruction from afar. We studied the impact site extensively, but the more information we gathered, the greater our concern grew. First, it was clear that the fire was highly unnatural. Even with nothing flammable to burn, it would spread. Water, concrete, stone, metal, it all lit up like wood and tinder. We even had field operatives set up flame retardant devices designed not to burn at any temperature, and we watched as it lit up like a Christmas tree. The other disturbing observation we had was the consistency at which the fire grew, in perfectly circular form regardless of terrain type or the wind speed and direction. We observed and recorded as the physical laws of nature were casually ignored in front of us, and in the end we had no less questions and no more answers. Then, one day, the fire began to recede. The way it looked, it was as if a giant invisible hand began slowly turning down the heat on a stove, having finished cooked its meal. Puzzled firefighters mixed with the raucous cheering of crowds. Then the meteor stood. The first thing I realized was that the alien was humanoid. Long, thin stalks resembling legs held up a blobbish and comparatively smaller torso. Its arms were similarly oversized, they hung down to where its knees would be, if it had them. Shockingly, its overall shape resembled the big-headed, black-eyed alien from science fiction, with a couple of notable distinctions. The first was that it wasn't some little bugger, it was half a skyscraper's size. The second, well, that's a bit harder to explain. Dimensionally abstract and clearly beyond the limit of human observation, its skin would appear gray initially but shift form, transparency, and color, constantly forcing one's eyes adjust to different distances into spectrums of color that didn't feel fully observable to the beholder. This interaction we found went beyond just our ability to see, as viewing the alien for even a short amount of time invoked high amounts of stress and disorientation. The longer you looked, the more damaging and lasting psychological pressure you were exposed to. Things had long ago stopped feeling like science. One of our leads theorized that its skin was allowing us to peer into other dimensions. No one ever learned if it was one way or the other. One thing for sure though, behind the waves of heat and despite lacking any features other than a mouth that had a clear expression, a curved line had formed where its mouth should have been. A huge, eyeless smile on its face had appeared. What does it mean, Isaac? It was a late day at the office again, but this time it certainly wasn't empty as our director Shannon Allen was here. Shannon was one of those seriously rare individuals who knew her shit when it came to her field of study, but was also extremely skilled in business settings. I didn't even know you could get a PhD and an MBA until I met her. She acted as a liaison between the actual government and our weird, pseudo-Illuminati branch of the government thing we had going on. Not just smart and competent, but she was also totally charismatic and gorgeous, and found respect and admiration from peers in almost any setting she was in. She was also married to Ken, an event he and I both agreed must have been just slightly more likely than the chance of finding life on another planet. Not sure what you're saying, Isaac. You literally wrote a thesis on human behavior and how it pertains to animal instincts. I get that this is a new situation, but that's the point of our mission. This isn't the time to build information. There are people in the White House you may have heard of that want to know what the hell is happening right now. I don't think I can recall a time I was more uncomfortable. I went from searching for aliens to this in a matter of weeks. Well, I didn't want to say this, because frankly I have very little data and… Isaac, we're listening. No one expects you to have a citation with an article attached. We just know you probably have the best guess as to what's going on. Shannon was tough but fair, if only because she wanted efficiency and the best results from her subordinates. I think it's hostile, I said abruptly. The whispered murmurs and speculations stopped as the room of Epsilon scientists gave me full attention. Not to contradict myself, but why do you think that? Shannon posed cautiously. We've already brought up the destruction of Manhattan. But that alone could be construed as bad luck. Likely the alien could have landed anywhere. What I think confirms its intent is the smile. I was nervous in a different way now. Not because of the situation, but because of what this meant for all of us. I remember wishing to never be more wrong about something in my life. Have you heard of the Japanese macaque? No, Isaac, I haven't. Shannon said impatiently. It's a type of primate you can find in certain places in Japan. I persevered. They're generally friendly, but the locals will always tell you not to smile at them. They take it as a threatening sign, baring your teeth to fight, so to speak. Many animals share this connotation with smiling. So, you're saying it wants to fight? This is some sort of primal instinct? Ken proposed, confused. Sort of. I'm saying it's not a natural thing that we find smiling to mean friendship. The act of smiling is not universal, it's a cultural and learned interaction that is relatively unique to human beings. Anything this evolved wouldn't just somehow know to smile. What's your point? Gary asked, interrupting me. So it's doing this because what? Gary was another lead, and one who always got on my case. He hated how, unlike almost all the staff, I had gotten in despite lacking proper credentials, and thought it must have been my connection to Ken. Unfortunately, he was an important figure at Epsilon, and commanded a lot of authority. He was a constant critic, even in crisis. I inhaled sharply. Because it doesn't make any fucking sense that something as evolved as this, as intelligent as this, that has studied us enough to understand our cultural cues, lands right on a city on a planet where 90% of its surface area is completely uninhabited, and, likely understanding this situation, it chooses to smile at us. I threw my hands up, exacerbated. Of all the things it must have learned about human beings, it landed on one of the most populated cities on the planet and then fucking smiled. It doesn't make sense, Dash. It doesn't make sense unless it's hostile, Shannon interrupted, quietly. The chattered debate in the room came to a conclusive silence. Even Gary was quiet. It wasn't certain, even I could admit that, but the logic was undeniable. It was the simplest explanation we had, and the most likely. Occam's razor is a bitch like that. We didn't have to wait for long to know for sure. Hey Dash. Hey, something's happening. We heard someone yell from the break room. The team quickly crowded into the room, staring at the tiny rec room TV we had. We watched, helpless, as world leaders from across the globe began approaching the crater where the alien had landed. Presidents and dictators, they all wordlessly assembled despite the desperate pleas of their cohorts who tried to pull them away to no avail. I can't fully explain to you how evolved it was. We really didn't have a chance in hell. Its biology had at least several millennia of a head start on ours, and as a result the alien had extensive telepathic and psychophysical abilities. In short, the alien could make you a passenger in your own body, a witness to the actions you commit, mind control, though one wanted to say it out loud. It could also physically manipulate objects with its mind, effortlessly moving many different objects at once and at will. Most terrifying, though, was its omnipresence in one's consciousness. As simply as reading a book, it could invade your thoughts, determine your deepest intentions and secrets, and even edit these at will. Deleting memories, adding motives, with enough attention it could fully rewrite your personality. The first thing it made them do was strip their own clothes off, and bow to it. They gathered around it, shuffling through rubble until forming, yes, a perfect circle around it. Then it just burned them all alive. Just set them on fire, no gasoline or anything. It was as if it snapped its fingers and they turned into balls of screaming flames. Easier than that, even. The unfortunate cohorts that followed them ran over themselves trying to escape, and these ones it was more creative with. Some had blood gush out of their eyes, nose and mouth, something have imploded within their skulls. Others ran away frantically, before suddenly tripping and twitching before ceasing all movement. I saw some have their limbs and appendages physically ripped off as if by invisible fingers and hands. Dash. That was the last of it before the broadcast cut. No one said anything. All that bullshit about animal and human behavior, it was obvious what the alien was doing at this point. This was how it told us it owned us. This was how it said, yes, you were right, I'm God. And I hate you. Anyway, the last thing I remember, I could swear I saw its fucking smile widen on the crackly television during the close-up. I thought that night, before I slept, that it must have been my imagination. That what I saw wasn't the beginning of something worse, but just a horrific accident. Later, though, Ken would confide in me that he saw it too.